Mr. John? Present. Ms. Hockenberry?
Here.
Mr. Meeks?
Here.
Mr. Rankin?
Here.
Ms. Rogers? Here. Mr. Wodiska?
Here.
Ms. Teets is absent this evening.
Thank you.
I'd like to call for a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
I so move.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is adopted as presented. Are there planning commission reports tonight? Any planning commission reports?
No.
Ms. Hockenberry?
Did you have one?
No. Waiting for you.
Jeez, it's so embarrassing. Anyway, I attended the EDA meeting last week, and there was a plan presented for funding by the EDA for wayfinding signs for the bicycle routes and here in the city, and also for possible of painting bike things on the road and everything like that. But, so it was approved to fund the wayfinding, which I know we've been very, very interested in, but I also invited them to please come forth and tell Planning Commission about the ideas and everything, because I know we have people here who are very, very interested, and Paul Stoddard did a very good job of presenting it with the CACT. And the only other thing,
Can I ask you a
What?
quick
Yeah.
question on that? You said, did you say that the ADA approved funding? Or
EDA,
the EDA, that they approved funding for that?
yeah, $5,000.
Okay.
But in my way of thinking, we need to be aware of this, come with a CIP, that we can put a, composite type of CIP with part of this funding within it. But they said that that really the painting on the road or striping on roads needed more study through the CACT. The other situation was definitely that they're still having trouble in the 100, 200 block of West Broad with visibility for the businesses down there with the trees. So they're still trying to see if they can work out a situation with the arborists to trim up the trees a little bit, because it cannot be seen. And then the only other thing that I just wanted to say is that I hope everybody saw that article in the Washington Post magazine about E.B. Henderson being inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame last weekend up in Massachusetts, which is, a huge honor. But it was a wonderful article and a lot about civics in early stages of the town of Falls Church at that point. And I think that the schools are going to plan on using it as part of civic lessons when they study, because it was a wonderful article. If you didn't get it, I can get you copies of it.
Thank you. Any further reports? All right, we will move on to receipt of petitions. Are there any petitioners in the audience who wish to speak on things other than are on the agenda? So that could be just about anything. We have no agenda items. All right, seeing none, I will move on to the Planning Director's report. Mr. Snyder?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. First, I wanted to introduce Nancy Vincent, who is our Director of Housing, and she will be in human. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. No, go ahead. Nancy has put together and is heading up a group that is looking at the issue of food trucks and mobile facilities here in the city. And you have a copy of a report of that study group that Nancy has been working on, and it includes some recommendations. These are coming forward as a possible zoning ordinance amendment. This group the commission has not been involved in this to date, and so we thought this would be a good way to give you an update of their activities a timetable and also the latest information from that group. So I wanted to see if we could have Nancy present this, and also you may have questions about this. So I'd like to do it this time because it's not presently on our agenda, but it's on a fast time track.
Okay.
And I will then, after we finish with that, I'll go on with the rest of my report. That's okay.
Nancy?
Thank you. The reason that this is becoming an issue in the City of Falls Church is that with the anticipated new development that's going to be happening, those construction sites will likely attract food trucks to the city. Also, a request was made by a city resident who would like to operate a food cart in the city, and she made a request to the city council. So the city manager asked me to put together a study group to look at this issue and to make a recommendation. So this group was made up of and you'll see in your packet, the Chamber of Commerce, a couple of restaurant owners in the city, the staff from the Development Services staff, from Human Services staff, Fire Marshal, Economic Development. And the group met together and decided to recommend that food trucks be allowed to operate in the City of Falls Church. The zoning code currently is silent on the issue. And let me, just as an aside, this issue is separate from what goes on during the farmers markets and the Memorial Day and the other special events that happen in the city. There's a different process for that. So this would be solely for these food trucks, carts that come in, that would want to come in and operate in the city. So the recommendation of the group was to allow these businesses to operate in the city, providing that they follow very similar procedures that the brick and mortar restaurants follow. So they would be required to obtain a license. They would be required to have an inspection by the health department, an inspection by the fire marshal. The operators would need to be fingerprinted by the police department. And then at the end of this process, a Falls Church approved sticker would be issued to the truck or cart, and that would need to be displayed prominently so that law enforcement would know that that vehicle has been approved to operate in the city. And the upshot of all of this is that it would provide a way to really ensure that these trucks are following safety guidelines, and we're ensuring the health and safety of our residents, and then at the same time looking at the competitive aspects with the brick and mortar restaurants that operate in the city, and to know that they are kind of on the same footings as far as following the same regulations. So anyway, the study group is presenting this to boards and commissions for their input prior to presenting the recommendation to City Council, so that any input that you have can be kind of put in on the ground floor. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions and can offer any additional information that you would like.
And since this would be a zoning ordinance amendment, it would have to come through the Planning Commission for a vote for any text change. So given the nature of this, fast tracking, I wanted to make sure you got a preview of it. So this is that preview.
So there was no representative from the Planning Commission on your task force?
No, this was a staff
Staff
group plus the
Well,
chamber.
except for the chamber.
And the zoning administrator has put together a memo which has the proposed or possible draft language that might be advertised that would make these changes.
Yes. And there were also restaurant owners who were part of the study group.
One thing that I noticed is that the mobile food service shall not occupy a public right-of-way.
Right, right.
Where would they be able to go? I mean, if they couldn't park on a street corner and serve?
On private property. So with the example of the new development, they would have to get permission from the developer to park at the construction site.
So it's only really to serve construction people. I mean, it's not, I'm thinking of the type of food service trucks that are in the District of Columbia, where they park at a street corner and people realize they're going to come there, and they serve wonderful ethnic food and lunchers all over the city gravitate toward these food trucks, but we won't be able to do that.
And we don't have the space to do that. And this would also allow the current restaurant owners, if they would like to have a truck or a cart, to go out and do it also themselves, but it would not be on the streets.
There could be an arrangement between the operator of one of these and a property owner to, yeah.
Right, in the parking lot.
Right. Madam Chair?
Yes?
If I might. Yeah, the issue was brought forth by one of our citizens who wants to have a food cart within the city and to do it legally, because there were a couple who were, that were being done illegally within the city. And so that was her reason for bringing it forward. And I do know that she has had permission from Giant Food to be up on their parking lot, or for Federal Realty probably, and that type of thing.
Well, that's a good compromise. Any other questions?
Yeah, quick question. I was looking at going through all of this, and I was wondering why it was so restrictive, because, like Madam Chairman said, food trucks are supposed to be, well, mobile. That's why they're called food trucks. And the fact that I think there was even a question of a site plan amendment to get a food truck on a piece of property. Isn't that a little bit too excessive? And couldn't we designate certain zones within the city where food trucks can at least park for the day or for the afternoon or something like that? Because, I mean, there were two things that you said. You said one of them was food trucks coming to a construction site. But in my experience at construction sites, they come in for only about an hour, maybe 11:30, and the construction people buy their food, and then they leave and go to a different, construction site. So for real food trucks, the ones that are pseudo restaurants, you really want to be able to help them with space, provided by the city, so that they can operate. I mean, it's commercially viable for the city to be able to operate these little vendors and be able to tax them. So I would consider not putting too many restrictions in the way by which these people can set up their establishments. So that's my only comment.
And all of what you say is perfectly possible to do. Do you have a specific recommendation about what should be less restrictive?
Oh, I was thinking more of, sorry. Did I turn it off? Yeah, I was thinking more about the real food trucks, the ones that are more like restaurant type, and not the construction, because the construction food trucks just are basically temporary. They come in and they leave, and then after the construction is over, they disappear. They said, but with the food trucks that I'm seeing in DC, over by, let's say, for example, if you look at the State Department or the Federal Reserve, behind the State Department, the Federal Reserve, there's space for them, and people go there to eat at lunchtime. So I would, something to look at, rather than having to restrict them by all of these ordinances that I see being proposed in here.
Rob, did you have a comment? No comment. Thank you very much. We appreciate your giving us this information.
So as this would come through, of course, the commission could make recommendations, and certainly we'll take your thoughts and integrate those into the comments, maybe going forward to council before this. This would have to go to first reading first, and then would come out to boards and commissions, and a vote at the planning commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy, thank you so much. In terms of a report, I did want to mention, we did have a tour last Tuesday with members of the Housing Commission, and also, was it the Human Services Group of the South Washington Street area. It was well attended. Councilman Duncan also attended. Dana Lewis of the housing staff led it from their point of view, and I participated. But we had a good walking tour of the South Washington Street area and saw a lot of the things going on there, including the progress on the Easter Seals building, which some of you may have seen under construction, particularly if you live nearby. It's well underway, and we're hoping for an opening there in mid-October. We also noticed a number of the challenges in terms of existing conditions, sidewalks, and so forth, which the plan identifies possible solutions for. So I did want to just acknowledge that I thought it was we'd been asked to put that, to work with those groups on the tour, and we collectively, I think, found it very helpful. So it was one of the suggestions of one of the advisory groups looking at the South Washington Street plan. Let's go look at it and walk through it. So that was a very helpful thing. Also, I wanted to look forward to items coming up, particularly we're looking later this month at a possible joint work session with Planning Commission Architectural Advisory Board to look at Harris Teeter project. There's a little bit of question about what dates are going to work for them, but either late September or possibly early October. And first meeting in October, we're looking at the South Washington Street plan, which we're going to talk about tonight, coming forward for commission action to make recommendations to City Council. We'll also be looking at the stormwater ordinance, which we're going to talk about tonight, and several other ordinances, including the 20-foot front yard setback and the possible removal of assisted living as a by right use in the B1 zone. Many of these were a topic of our joint work session with City Council last week. And so I wanted to highlight those as items coming forward. Also, Madam Chair, you had mentioned an interest in trying to have a retreat or a Planning Commission meeting to talk about goals and objectives and the future. So we need to come up with a date and a place and time that would work for commissioners. And that would be commission only, just to talk through where are we and looking toward the end of the year. So those are items on our list as we look ahead to October. Also, you have received a copy of the draft report of the library study, and it has not yet been finalized and gone to council, but the architects are going to be in town this Wednesday around 10:30, and so if members of the commission have interest in meeting with that design team, please let us know. I mean, I think Ms. G has put that together in a memorandum that's attached to the report. Mary McMahon has been working very hard on this with the library group, and there is a lot of good information in this, so I wanted to make sure that commissioners, if you had a chance, or some member of the commission would have a chance to meet with that group, it would be very much appreciated. So that's all I have at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Snyder? Russ?
Yeah, just a real
Go
quick
ahead.
one. I just noticed on the bottom of this report that there were no enforcements for the month of August. I know we passed this ordinance a little while ago. Have there been any instances where enforcement has been necessary?
Because of staffing shortages, we have slowed down in terms of our inspections on the ordinance, because we've had to have people in at the counter. We are doing a recruitment right now to fill a vacant position. Hope to have that done by the end of the month. So that is something that we've been working on a complaint basis. There was an item that was in the commercial area that was appealed to the BZA, and this was an appeal of an enforcement, and we were upheld on that appeal. This was where there'd been illegal addition put on a building, and it was supposed to be taken down. So that just happened last week on Maple Avenue.
Actually, my question is right along the same line as Russ's. Is there anything we can do under our new plan for compliance and everything to do with the vegetation control at the reserve site. It's an eyesore, and I think it could very well invite vandalism, graffiti, et cetera. And, I think it's looking for trouble.
I've notified the owners and the prospective owners and their attorney 2 weeks ago about the need to take care of that. There was some work done, but I don't believe it's been satisfactory. And our intent is, and I notified this of our intent to cite them with a warning letter to clean that up and go through that process. So that's an ongoing effort. It definitely needs to be cleaned up, and we've notified the present owner and the prospective
It's
contract
a
owners.
longstanding problem. And then the only other thing is about the Hilton Garden Inn. Is that moving along on time? There seems to have not been very many people working on it lately.
We understand that they are looking to be open in March, and that they are receiving a good bit of interest by prospective customers regarding the opening and the ability to occupy the hotel. So as far as I know, it's going along at the pace it should, and they hope to open in March.
I hope so.
Any update with Lee and Fulton?
I'm sorry, say
The
that.
house at Lee and Fulton?
I believe they have resubmitted a request to HARB regarding a revision. And Ms. G, maybe you can chime in on this. They are going to go to, I think, to the September HARB meeting.
Yes, through a negotiated process between city staff and the property owner, the applicant has filed an application to amend their previous application to alter the structure. And so the HARB will be hearing that on the 26th of September. The meeting is in the Oak Room, beginning at 7 p.m.
I think one of the things this points out is that we need more precise definitions about what is demolition, what is raising, and we also are looking internally at processes we can establish to avoid something like this happening. Ms. G has put together a draft letter that we would ask any applicant or person with an historic house getting a permit to sign, recognizing that they understand the objectives of the ordinance, that we're trying to preserve, not demolish houses. And we also would have zoning inspection periodically monitor any of these permits so that we can make sure that nothing untoward is going on. So we're looking to have a sit-down meeting before the permit is handed over to the builder and the owner so that everyone understands and we're all on the same page about what is to be done. So those are things we're looking at internally. I've also been researching other jurisdictions and how they are dealing with these, with historic structures and what is and is not a demolition or a raising.
Can I just was there, did we get verification that there was a permit given?
They did get a building permit, and there was a building permit issued, but the amount of old structure that was removed as part of that is what was of course, evident at the site, and certainly not the intent of the HARB or the staff as in approving that building permit.
But the building permit did not state anything else about the historic aspects of demolition?
Well, there were areas in the plan that talked about certain walls would be modified, but what is the definition of? In other words, you can take a wall and remove plaster and other things and make repairs, or you can remove the whole wall. And in this case, the latter happened, which was not the intent.
The other thing that still bothers me is that nothing was ever recycled from it also. And that's a shame that it was just all sent to dump, because some of that wood would be very, very valuable to people doing, for remodeling and everything.
And those are all good points and things that we're taking into consideration. We definitely, I think, we're working to tighten our own administrative processes internally, make sure that people who are going forward understand and acknowledge that by signing the letter, what the intent is and what their responsibilities are. And then having zoning do regular inspections that's aside from the building inspections that look at electrical and plumbing and those kinds of things.
Just to follow up in case someone asked me, so has it been determined if a violation occurred or not? And are we still determining that? And if there was a violation, is there any sort of penalty? And if so, what is it?
That's all still part of the negotiations that have been going on. And we'll know more after the Harb hearing, I believe, on the 26th. Is that a fair statement, Deborah?
Anything further? I have a question about 408 Van Buren. In the paper street that's next to that property, I noticed that it's been being landscaped. Is the city landscaping that street? That not in use street?
I don't believe the city is landscaping it. I was unaware of any activity on that, but we will
Well,
look
there's
into
definitely
that.
landscaping going on there. And I'm just wondering if it is the developer that's doing that, I think the city should at least look into it, because we certainly wouldn't want to have him coming back and saying he's improved the property, therefore he might have a, some kind of a option on it. That is a paper street, does not belong to that property. Look,
No, it's definitely-
It was way overgrown, it is now landscaped.
It's definitely city property. We'll look into it. My understanding is the previous owner may have fenced off part of that street earlier, but I don't know specifically if that was the case or
There
not.
was a fence, it's gone.
That has been
There is
removed,
now
yeah.
new trees planted, new bushes. There's all kinds of mulch going on there. It looks like part of the yard.
I know we had wanted, one of the things that had been talked about on that property was the need to remove any private fencing that was on the city property, which I guess had been there for some time with the previous house. So we'll look into that, but certainly we wanted to make sure that any fencing that implied that yard was
No, there's
part
no
of-
fencing there at all. It's just been landscaped.
Okay.
So I think that also indicates some intent by the developer to,
Appreciate the heads up on it.
okay. Anything further? Okay. We have no old business, we have no new business, and we have no other business on our agenda. We do have the approval of the minutes of the 3rd of September. Did everyone have a chance to look at it? Are there any amendments to the minutes? I do have a question, because it's not clear to me how this is stated. It's on line 63, and I remember Mr. Rankin saying this. He stated he owned a historic structure and would like more information about the recent situation. And because in the previous paragraph, I reported that the Planning Commission was thinking of writing a letter in support of a more restrictive historic preservation ordinance. I'm just wondering, Mr. Rankin, did you get your information?
I think my comment was just that I would like to have input on that letter before
Okay.
it's,
All right, so that may be clarified, and we can change that a little bit. Yeah, I understand exactly what you meant, but I couldn't remember the exact way you worded it. Is there, since we have no other amendments, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second?
Second.
I abstain.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And Ms. Hockenberry abstained. I'll look for a motion to adjourn to
Motion
our
to
work
adjourn?
session. Is there a
I
second?
second.
Meeting is adjourned.